Hello everyone, I'm Roligin Dumalaog, your discussant for today. In this video, I'll be discussing one of the most important aspects of curriculum development, and that is curriculum implementation. But before we proceed to our discussion, let's first have the objectives. At the end of the discussion, students should be able to demonstrate knowledge of curriculum implementation, create a matrix of the various models of curriculum implementation, analyze issues in the implementation of curriculum, and highlight the importance of curriculum implementation. So what is curriculum implementation and why is it very important? Well, in spite of careful planning and design, it is still possible that a curriculum fails to meet the needs for which it is developed. Neither at the stage of planning nor that of designing can we really examine the efficacy or otherwise of the curriculum. In essence, the curriculum has to be implemented in order that its relevance and relative merits can be assessed. Okay, so let's say that a group of curriculists have worked together to develop a new curriculum that's much innovated or enhanced compared to the existing one, and they've already come up with a plan and design. Now, considering the fact that there is still a possibility for failures to exist no matter how carefully planned or designed a curriculum is, what should they do next to examine the efficacy of their planned curriculum? Well, the answer is by putting it into practice. And here's where curriculum implementation comes in. Curriculum implementation refers to the act of working out the plans and suggestions that have been made by curriculum specialists and subject experts in a classroom or school setting. So, curriculum specialists and subject experts are considered as implementing agents, and they work together in coming up with newer plans and suggestions for the betterment of curriculum. So, they will be further discussed later, one by one. Teachers are the main curriculum implementers, while at the same time, students, parents, and school administrators can be directly or indirectly involved in the implementation process. Well, this is why as future educators, it is indeed necessary for us to delve into the aspects of curriculum implementation because, as stated here, teachers are considered as the main curriculum implementers. Well, of course, there are also some other people involved, but out of all these mentioned stakeholders, it's the teachers who act as the architects of school curriculum. Well, they make lesson plans, analyze and address the needs of the students, and some are even part of textbook committees. Meaning to say, as we become teachers, we start becoming curriculists or curriculum makers as well. Curriculists, also known as curriculum makers, may follow models of curriculum implementation depending on what may suit their needs and concerns. During the implementation stage, several issues may arise which make it important for curriculists to consider implementation as a process that attempts to reduce the difference between existing practices and the practices suggested by innovators or change agents. So later on, we're going to be talking about these models of curriculum implementation. So there are 4 in total, and the issues will be tackled in the part 2 of this discussion. Implementation is the act of putting the prescribed curriculum into practice in the school. It is the ultimate objective of curriculum development process because only after this has been done will the learners have the opportunity to experience the curriculum and benefit from it. So, by definition, prescribed curriculum refers to a statutory curriculum approved by a competent government in charge by law of defining the content of curriculum. So, since it is statutory, then it is required to implement it in schools. And through curriculum implementation, curriculums can be able to assess whether any of the desired impact is made or whether the goals are attained or not. What is curriculum implementation? Ornstein and Hankins define curriculum implementation as the interaction between the curriculum that has been written and planned and the persons who are engaged in charge to deliver it. Curriculum implementation implies the following: shift from what is the current to a new or enhanced curriculum, change in knowledge, action, and attitudes of the persons involved, change in behavior using new strategies and resources, and change which requires efforts, hence, goals should be achievable. So as you can see, we have these keywords shift and change. So why is that? Why are these changes suggested by innovators or agents? Well, these are probably suggested because there might be something about the current curriculum that must be revised or completely changed. And in curriculum implementation, these shifts or changes are expected to be adopted so that your goals can be attained, and also to assess if the changes have led to some sort of betterment. Curriculum implementation means putting into practice the written curriculum that has been designed in syllabi, course study, curricular guides, and subjects. It is a process wherein the learners acquire the planned or intended knowledge, skills, and attitudes that are aimed at enabling the same learners to function effectively in the society. Let us highlight this phrase, putting written curriculum into practice. As we all know, written curriculum is made by both teachers and experts and is being pilot tested in schools. And through pilot testing, written curriculum is being put into practice. Of course, with the aim of making the students acquire the intended knowledge, skills, and attitudes. In the classroom context, curriculum implementation means teaching what has been written in the lesson plan. Implementing means using the plan as a guide to engage with the learners in the teaching learning process with the end in view that learning has occurred and learning outcomes have been achieved. It involves the different strategies of teaching with the support instructional materials to go with the strategy. Here we can see some familiar terms that will remind us of some types of curriculum. Um, Lesson plan for taught curriculum, learning outcomes for learned curriculum, and instructional materials for supported curriculum. Anyway, in a classroom context, a lesson plan is indeed important because it serves as a guide that a teacher uses every day to determine what the students will learn and how the lessons will be taught, as well as how learning will be evaluated. And lesson plans enable teachers to function more effectively in the classroom by giving a detailed outline that they adhere to during each class. Curriculum implementation means putting the curriculum into operation with the different implementing agents. Curriculum implementation takes place in a class, a school, a district, a division, or the whole educational system. Or in higher education, curriculum implementation happens for the course, a degree program, the institution, or the whole higher education system. It requires time, money, personal interaction, personal contacts, and support. So, in curriculum implementation, there are different implementing agents. So, let's try to specify them one by one. So, in a class, we have the teachers. In a school, we have school administrators. In district level, we have the district supervisors. And in division level, we have the division superintendents. And for the whole educational system, we have the education program specialists of DepEd. And when it comes to higher education, we have the course instructors for specific courses, academic deans for degree program, and education program specialists of CHED for whole higher education system. In the case of a new or revised curriculum, this process ideally includes school development and improvement processes, fostered school leadership and ethos, in-service teacher training, and the development of new textbooks, teaching and learning materials, and resources, as well as guidelines. Whenever there's a new curriculum, certain adjustments are being done in order to make sure that the institutional structure would be compatible with the suggested innovation. And aside from the institutional structure,
In-service teachers must also be given the new relevant knowledge and skills in order for them to have the capability to adapt with the new changes. And that can be done through trainings or seminars. And supported curriculum is also enhanced since there are newer proposed contents that are not contained by previously developed textbooks, materials, and other resources. Now let's talk about the four different models of implementation. We have the ORC model, LOC model, Linkage model, and RCA model. So these models that we are going to talk about are not the only models available in the area of curriculum implementation, but for our present purposes, it is reasonable to restrict ourselves to a few models which are either popular or widely practiced. First, talk about overcoming resistance to change model, also known as ORC model. This model rests on the assumption that the success or otherwise of curriculum implementation primarily depends on the impact the developer can make on the consumers, and those are the teachers, students, and the society in general. And while addressing the persons within the system, we should remember that in order to get the desired results, the subordinates should be motivated rather than ordered. And the curriculum developers should therefore identify and deal with the concerns of the staff in various educational institutions. And we can group the concerns into four broad developmental stages. And here are those developmental stages. For stage 1, we have the unrelated concerns. So at this stage, teachers do not perceive a relationship between themselves and the suggested changes. For example, if a new program is being developed, a teacher at this stage may or may not be aware of this effort. And if he or she is aware of it, he or she may not consider it as something that concerns him or her. And the teacher would not resist the change because he or she really does not perceive the change as something that influences his or her own personal or professional domain. And for stage 2, we have the personal concerns. So at this stage, the teacher will react to the innovation in relation to his or her personal situation. So here, the teacher is already concerned with how the new program compares to the one that's already in use. And therefore, when a new program is being launched, he or she would involve himself or herself in the activity. And for stage 3, we have the task-related concerns. This stage relates to the actual use of the innovation. So here the teacher will be concerned with the time required for reaching the new program, availability of the materials, strategies to be adopted, etc. And for stage 4, we have impact-related concerns. So here the teacher will be concerned with how the innovation will influence others. And when working with the ORC model, we must deal directly with the concerns at stages 2, 3, and 4 in order to serve the purpose for which the change is affected. And to achieve this purpose, faculty members may meet, and during the meeting, everyone can share each other's concern and map strategies for dealing with those concerns. And depending on the context and particular needs, questionnaires can be administered to gather and share information on concerns to make such meetings successful. Now let's talk about Leadership Obstacle Course Model, also known as LOC model. This model treats staff resistance to change as problematic and proposes that we should collect data to determine the extent and nature of the resistance. Well, there are some instances wherein some staffs tend to resist the adaptation of new curriculum, probably because they are still lacking of clear understanding about it, or their skills are still not that enough, materials are not sufficient, or they just really don't see its relevance at all. That's why they're not that motivated about it. Now, because of this, the implementation of curriculum becomes problematic since they have this resistance to change. That's why this model proposes that data should be collected in order for curricula to find out the level or extent of resistance of each institutional staff. We can do this by making sure that the following 5 conditions exist. The organizational members must have a clear understanding of the proposed innovation. So this can be done through seminars, meetings, or conferences. And individuals within the organization must be given relevant skills so that they possess the capabilities requisite for carrying out the innovation. So this can be done through trainings or workshops. And the necessary materials and equipment for the innovation must be furnished, and if need be, the organization structure must be modified so that it is compatible with the innovation being suggested, and the participant in the innovation must be motivated to spend the required time and effort to make the innovation a success. And if all of these 5 conditions are present in each staff, then there's a lesser chance for them to resist the adaptation of curriculum changes since they have the readiness. And if their understanding about it is clear, the teachers are already well trained, materials are sufficient, and the staffs are motivated enough, then they are indeed ready for certain changes. The LOC model extends the ORC model in several respects. While the ORC model conceptualizes educational change as a 2-stage process, which include initiation and incorporation. By the way, the stage of initiation is when the curriculum developers already have the initiative to support the prescribed changes, while the stage of incorporation it's when the innovation is adopted as part of the ongoing process of the organization, meaning the suggested changes are already adopted and have already become part of the established program. And the LOC model considers educational change as a sequence of 3 stages: initiation, attempted implementation, and incorporation. So attempted implementation is added here. So we should note here that implementation obstacles solved at one point of time using this model may arise again at another point. And this model therefore has a feedback and monitoring mechanism to determine if problems that are once solved keep on reappearing.
Now let's talk about the linkage model. The linkage model recognizes that there are innovators in research and development centers, universities, etc. Educators in the field, however, find some of their attempts at innovations that are inappropriate for solving the problems. What is therefore needed is a match between the problems and innovations, the establishment of linkages. This model envisages 2 systems, the user system and the research system. The user system involves individual problems and societal problems, while the research system involves university and research center. And there has to be a link between these 2 systems, and the research system should have a clear picture of the curriculum's user problems if it is to retrieve or create appropriate educational packages. A successful research system must proceed through a cycle of diagnosis, search, fabrication of solution, dissemination, and evaluation in order to test out its product or to find out if the problems of user systems are really solved by innovations of resource system. And if they match, then there can be a linkage between the 2.
And for the last one, we have the RAN Change Agent Model, also known as RCA model. This model suggests that organizational dynamics seem to be the chief barriers to change. As in ORD and LOC models, it puts forward the following 3 stages in the change process. First is initiation. At this stage, The curriculum developers work to secure the support for the anticipated change. To support a change, such a new program, people must understand and agree that it is legitimate. Thus, curriculum implementation activity requires the personal backing of the individuals involved. For example, at this stage, we should inform the teachers about the need for change and how it might take place. Next is implementation. At this stage, the proposed change, like the new program and organizational structure, are adjusted to operationalize the change. So here, the assumption behind this is that the success of the implementation is a function of the characteristics of the proposed change, the abilities of the academic and administrative staff, the readiness of the local community, and the organizational structure. And for the last stage, we have incorporation. And during this stage, the changes implemented become part of the established program.
And that's all for the first part of our discussion. Thank you so much for listening, and see you in part 2, wherein we're going to talk about the roles of stakeholders and the issues of curriculum implementation. Bye!